Hey, I have a special ask for you. Have you ever looked at an industry report and thought, this doesn't reflect my business at all? Same. That's why I created the State of Virtual Bookkeeping and Accounting survey, specifically for solo bookkeepers and small virtual firms like ours. It's anonymous, it takes less than 7 minutes, and for every response, I'm donating $1 to Charity Water. Head over to ambitiousbookkeeper.com/survey to take it now and help shape the future of our industry for all of us. That's ambitiousbookkeeper.com/survey. We will be closing the survey at the end of May, so make sure you get your responses in and you will get a copy of the results when they're available. Thanks so much. Now let's get back to today's episode. Hey, and welcome to the Ambitious Bookkeeper Podcast. I'm Serena, CPA, a mom of 3, and I've been running a virtual bookkeeping business from my home since 2017. You are in the right place if you are a bookkeeper, accountant, or an accounting student, and you believe and know in your heart that your purpose is bigger than sitting in a cubicle. If you're ready to learn some actionable tips and strategies for starting and growing your accounting business, then I hope you stick around. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our April live Q&A. Ashley, if you'd like to unmute and ask your question, I see you raising your hand. You can unmute and ask, or you can pop the question in the chat. It's up to you.
Hi, good morning. So I have a few questions. Actually, first, I'm struggling to find a client because I just started, I am still starting my bookkeeping business. Recently, I just put in a resignation, so I decided this is the route I'm gonna go, but I don't have a client. So initially, I was struggling to find clients. But then there's people who reach out to me and said, hey, this is I want you to do. Can you set up my book, do bank feed, and I will take over after you get everything said and done, and they think they can do it themselves or their family member can do it. I can't argue for them, but at least, hey, the owner asked me to set up for him. But now my question is, how much am I gonna charge them? So I asked this the same question to probably 4 different bookkeeping groups on Facebook. Man, the answer I got is even more confusing. It starts from $25 per hour to $1,500. That big variance, I think, I think it's more complicated than I thought.
Yeah.
So I just kind of want to hear your thoughts or ask your thoughts. How am I going to structure this?
Yeah.
Especially since it's my first client, I do not want to intimidate that happen either.
When you ask a question to a group of other bookkeepers, like what they would charge, everyone has their own level of confidence in what they're charging. And so that's why there's such a huge disparity. And everyone is in some people are in a different market, right? So they have a different type of client base. All of that plays into it. But the biggest thing that plays into the disparity in pricing is people's confidence level in understanding their value. And that's not something that you're just going to get to overnight, most of us, right? So I definitely wouldn't charge $25 an hour, but for you, I would reflect on how much, since it is one of your first clients, you probably do want to do an hourly rate, especially for a setup, cleanup type situation. And then as you execute that that first one, you'll kind of get an idea of how long things take, the questions that you're going to have to ask. It's all going to be a learning experience. So it's really up to you what you're comfortable charging someone as you're learning, but also charging what the true value is. So I always try to say, look at what you want to be paid per hour and increase that by 20 to 30% because you also have some overhead running your business, and start with that and see how that feels. And then the other piece of it is being able to actually verbalize a price to somebody is difficult if you've never done that and you're starting out. So I would suggest actually practicing that in front of the mirror. So whatever price you decide on, talk to yourself in the mirror and say, this is the price for XYZ. And you're probably going to feel uncomfortable. You should feel a little bit uncomfortable. Otherwise, if you don't feel uncomfortable saying a price and it's your very first client, you're probably undercharging. So I know I'm not giving you an exact number, but everyone charges differently for their setups. Every business also has different needs during the setup, so it depends on the complexity. So a lot of our clients are really, really simple when we're doing setups because they're brand new businesses. They have maybe a handful of revenue streams or maybe just one or two. They don't have sales tax. They may not have employees because they're just starting out. So that makes a setup super simple. And so we don't charge as much as I would charge a company with multiple locations, lots of employees, sales tax, integrations, all that kind of stuff. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, it does. Actually, this owner being, just to give you a little bit background, I didn't share that, I forgot. So he is actually commercial property owner. He owns probably 5 locations. His property is located in 5 different locations. He said he's been using Wave, the software Wave. I never used it before. He basically just used Wave, uh, hire a VA, and just only generated P&L. There's no balance sheet whatsoever for 3 years. So he said probably like 150 transactions per location per month. So I sounds like there's a lot of transactions to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there might be a lot of transactions. And so are you doing a setup and going back in time to just like recreate everything because he was in Wave?
I'm not sure. I think that's some further communication I need to have with him because if it's just only set up, my understanding set up is just to set up a chart account, do bank feed, get everything up and run. But as far as reconciliation for the past 3 years or categorizing his transaction in the proper way, I would think that would be different, will be additional, go back beyond from addition of initial setup.
Yeah.
Is my understanding right?
Yeah, that would be in addition to just initial setup. So there's like the price you would charge, and that's probably why you got such a huge disparity in pricing discussion is
Mm-hmm.
there's a difference between just setting up books for somebody and like setting up the initial account, linking their bank accounts, and just, setting up their chart of accounts and maybe some reporting stuff for them versus actually setting up their books and either doing a catch up where you just go back in time and recreate however many periods, whether it's a year or a few months. The kind of my rule of thumb with it, I do have a discussion with the clients. I would ask, okay, going to set you up. How far back do we want to bring in information into these new set of books? Because they have everything in Wave, but when do they have everything caught up in Wave through the end of the year and they just want to keep everything there and start fresh for this year? Or do they want you to go back to 2024 to bring all the information in, all that kind of stuff?
Okay, that's really helpful. One following question is, sometimes, I know some clients mentioned that they ask, I just hear other people's conversation. They said, oh, my bookkeepers charge every minute questions I ask them. They kind of really not happy about it. They said, I just overheard one of the owners said, I just shoot her email and then she ended up charging me like a 1 hour's read or something. So I don't know, for example, when you assume that I already have this owner's business set up and up and run, and if he has questions regarding the setup, do I need to charge extra monies, or is actually free with the service?
We'll be back after a quick break.
This episode of the Ambitious Bookkeeper Podcast is sponsored by my brand new free training, The Ultimate Guide to Creating a Profitable Bookkeeping Business. In just 1 hour, you will learn 3 keys to creating and launching a profitable bookkeeping business. We will map out your path to creating a bookkeeping or accounting business that keeps you in control of your time, priorities, and expertise. From someone who built a 6-figure firm on part-time hours. That's right. You can stay in control of your time, keep family as your priority, and serve your clients well. It just takes a little strategy up front, and I'm going to help you with that during this free training. So head over to the show notes to sign up now for the next training and find out how you can choose the work you do, kick imposter syndrome to the curb, use tech to be super efficient, which all leads to a profitable business. Just head on over to ambitiousbookkeeper.com/training, and I will see you there.
Yeah, the way that I do my setups, if we're not going to continue the bookkeeping for them and they're going to either have it in-house or do it themselves,
Mm-hmm.
I typically offer them 30 days of communication so that
Okay.
they have 30 days to ask all the questions that they need as they're getting up and running. There's also the component of adding a training package to it. So not just the setting, but also, or setup, but also training them. So offering a number of training sessions, which you'd want to price out also at either an hourly rate or more, especially if you're going to give them the recordings, which I would suggest doing so that they're not continuing to come back to you. So these are all things that play into the pricing. So a setup could end up a $5,000 thing if you're also training them, creating procedures for them and all that kind of stuff, and then offering 30 days of support. So that's the way that I like to do it because I don't want people to feel nickel and dimed. I don't typically charge for communication when a client works with us, but if they're not going to continue to work with us, it's good to set parameters around that and boundaries of, okay, you have me and you have unlimited communication with me for 30 days. And after that, you're on your own. Otherwise, you're going to be paying for, I have links on my calendar that people can book at a paid rate in that case. So
Yeah,
that's also an option.
That's a good idea. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah. So I'm going to go back to the chat and look at some questions. Let's see. Kelvin says, question about when to recognize income received through a POS or merchant services processor. Sometimes a credit card transaction date falls in a different month than the deposit date of funds into a client's bank account. With cash basis accounting, we recognize income when the client has access to the funds, correct? Yes. So typically the way that we handle bookkeeping is we always enter things into the system with the date of like what's on the source document. So technically we're kind of doing accrual accounting, but we can run reports either way in Xero. And so that's just how I do it. I know in QuickBooks Online, it's a little more difficult to get accrual versus cash correctly unless you're entering things as cash basis, but then you don't really have an option for an accrual basis report in that situation. So depends on what system you're in. This is one of the many reasons I love Xero is because we just account for things as if the client is pretty much accrual basis. We don't do journal entry accruals for most of our clients unless they are actually wanting true accrual financials. But as far as the day-to-day transactions, if we have a bill or we have information from the POS system integrated, it's going to come in at the date of the transaction. And then it's just going to show as an outstanding deposit on the bank reconciliation or whatever. So that's my process, but you are correct. If you are actually doing cash basis accounting, you want to recognize things when they hit the bank. And so if that makes things simpler for you, especially if you're in QuickBooks Online and the client has no desire to have accrual financials, then absolutely just post those receipts when they actually hit the bank. So I hope that helps. Ashley asks, what software do you recommend to use for receiving payments? I heard Melio and Bill.com. It really depends on the industry of the client and what they need. I've never used Bill or Melio for receiving payments among any of my clients. Most of my clients use Stripe and PayPal or Go Cardless and that's what I use as well. It integrates into Xero. It takes ACH. You can do auto recurring payments and things like that. But I know you can do the same thing for Melio and Bill. So I would just evaluate the pricing among the softwares that you're looking at and how they integrate with the software that you're wanting to use. And I don't know if you're wondering for clients or for yourself, but that's how I would approach that. I'm assuming Melio is cheaper. Another option is Pluto, Plooto. And I know their transaction fees are a lot lower. Alyssa Ling, Workflow Queen, has a whole blog on that. So if you go to workflowqueen.com and go look at the blog, I'm sure you can search Pluto and get the scoop on all of that. Terry says, what is the best way you handle inventory when the client doesn't use the inventory process in QBO or use any inventory software? Would all expenses that come through the bank feed go to inventory that are inventory related? Then after a physical count is done, is that when the inventory and COGS adjusted to actual? Yes. I think I covered this on last month's Q&A, the exact same question. But yeah, so most of our clients, like I said, they're not officially accrual basis clients. They don't file taxes accrual basis. The rules around keeping inventory on the balance sheet and reporting that for tax purposes are like, you don't have to do that until the client is making like 20 million a year for 3 years or something like that. Don't quote me on the exact amount. I need to look this up to make sure it hasn't changed, but it's like an astronomical amount compared to our small clients. So I usually ask the client how they want to see inventory. Generally, they're keeping inventory in their Shopify or whatever, and they're managing their inventory in-house. All of our clients are small enough that they don't really have to worry about control processes like inventory control because they don't have other people in the warehouse. However, when you get a business that does have other employees in the warehouse, that's something that I would discuss with a client, is making sure they have proper inventory controls to make sure there's no theft and things walking out the door. But yes, what you explained is periodic inventory, and that is exactly how we handle it. Well, almost. I personally prefer to put everything to cost of goods sold and then adjust to inventory to back it out of cost of goods sold for whatever's left at year end. But it's the same effect of what you're doing. So you can put it to inventory if you want. The problem that I have with that is that a lot of people don't pay attention to the balance sheet. And so if you're not doing a periodic count until quarter end or maybe even year end, it's going to make the client look profitable all year. And you don't want them to think that they're super profitable all year if then at the end of the year, you're going to take all of that out of inventory and put it in COGS. So my preference is to actually book everything to COGS so it shows up on the P&L, the report that business owners are more likely to look at than the balance sheet. And so at least they have kind of an idea of what their cost of goods sold is from the purchasing standpoint throughout the year. And so that's how we look at it with our clients. And then when you look at it at the end of the year and take an average, that's their true gross profit margin. So that would be my preference, is to change the process slightly for you and actually book all the purchases to COGS throughout the year. Christina says, hi, Serena, are you planning to add more paid workshops in the future to the website? For example, how you manage payroll with Gusto? Thank you. I haven't thought about that. I'm open to suggestions on things like that people need. Absolutely let me know what you guys are struggling with. That would be a great little workshop to do on managing payroll for Gusto. However, I don't actually manage payroll for any of my clients these days. What we do is, and I'll just give you kind of like a little rundown of the process. We manage the integration and make sure everything's flowing through correctly to Xero. So I will facilitate the payroll setup. So depending on how savvy and involved the client wants to be, we will set up their Gusto account. We will facilitate making sure they're answering all the questions. I will go in and answer and do as much of the setup as I can for the client. And then I ask them to log in, sign the documents, do all the things that they actually have to do. And my preference is to have clients run their own payroll because they need to be looking at timesheets and all that stuff. And I don't want to be on the hook for running weekly or biweekly payroll for anyone. And that's just a personal preference. However, it doesn't mean that we won't do that in the future. So I do have a process that I used in the past for actually managing someone's payroll. So I could absolutely do a workshop on that if that's needed. But depending on what it is you're looking for, Gusto also has a lot of training material. So yeah, if you want to shoot me an email about exactly what you're struggling with and where the gaps are in the Gusto trainings, I would be happy to consider doing another workshop on that. Kim says, when you're collecting information and documenting uploads on Dubsado for onboarding new clients, Is that secure? Are you concerned about collecting sensitive client company data or having them upload their previous tax returns? Okay, so just to clarify, I don't have clients actually upload anything into Dubsado. Our setup has a link. We use a custom field inside of the Dubsado intake form that we've created on the back end. And we pop in their Google Drive shared folder. So we use the business version of Google Drive. It's more secure. Every one of our clients gets set up with a shared folder, and that's where we have this opportunity for them to share secure documents with us. And this is also where we put their financial statements. So nothing is going through email that needs to be secure. So that's the difference. I don't have them actually use the Dubsado portal because I did ask them when I first started using Dubsado, and things may have changed. So it's worth you doing your research and asking the people at Dubsado. But when I first started using it, I did ask that question. For me, it's really important for all of the softwares that I'm using and putting sensitive information into should have a SOC 1 and SOC 2 report, which is basically an audit of their security. So Google Drive, Google Workspace, or whatever it's called now, that does have a SOC 1 and SOC 2 report. So I think I did a podcast episode on this a long time ago, or at least have a blog on it. So that is the research I did when I first started using Dubsado, and they said, no, we don't recommend actually putting any tax returns and sensitive documentation in the portal. So I didn't. And that's why we do the things the way that we do it. I hope that helps. Yeah. Okay. Michael, hello. If anything is on the table regarding creating your social profiles, specifically LinkedIn, if bookkeeping is for now your side hustle. Example, my wife and I have been realtors for over 20 years. Every profile I have is real estate focused. How do I now introduce bookkeeping and appear professional, not a side hustle, as I want to make it my main gig, without losing or diluting what we are now doing to put food on the table? That's a really good question. I would consider how important you feel it is for that information to be on LinkedIn. I think it's totally acceptable. If you look at a lot of like multi-passionate entrepreneurs and people who are a part of multiple projects, like sitting on boards for certain companies, and also maybe they have their own company, and also maybe they work in corporate, you will see that in their work history, there will be like 3 or 4 things that say, whatever year to current or present. So I think that's completely acceptable to show that you have a company on your profile and put it in your work experience section, and maybe even in your heading or something like that too, especially if I don't know if you're niching, but if you have a real estate license and you understand the industry, it might be really wise to niche in that industry. I don't know if that's your preference or not, but that can also boost and help get business for your bookkeeping business. It's also something that you could start posting about and writing about your journey as you build this new business. If you spin it as like you guys are just entrepreneurs and you have multiple things going on, I think that's very common these days for people to not have all their eggs in one basket. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it personally, but there's probably a good way to go about it. So like you said, it doesn't dilute what you're now doing. The other option too is to actually create a company page in LinkedIn and do all of your, social posting for your bookkeeping business on that. And then when it's relevant, you can share it as you personally. So for example, if you were to go to my personal LinkedIn, Serena Shoop CPA, you'll see in my heading, it says accountant for online businesses, host of the Ambitious Bookkeeper Podcast, and there might be something else in my little heading blurb. And then you'll see in my experience, I own my bookkeeping business. I own the brand, The Ambitious Bookkeeper. And then I also have a separate company page for The Ambitious Bookkeeper. And that is where we post all of the actual social media stuff for that. On my personal page is where I do posting for both. It just depends on what I'm inspired for. But yeah, so it's really up to you how you manage your LinkedIn. The other option too is to actually maybe not post any of your bookkeeping stuff on LinkedIn. And especially if you're not going to niche in real estate and find the platform that A, you like, and B, makes sense for your ideal customer. So it might be a moot point if you're not doing real estate bookkeeping and it's some other industry where the decision makers are not on LinkedIn, then you need to do social media on the platform where those decision makers are. So that is my long-winded response to that. I hope it was helpful. Tang says, hi, Serena, after month end and recs are completed, how do you present the client's financial statements that make it more useful for them? I run the financial statements for them, but that's it. So I actually have a podcast episode on it. I don't think I have the video training posted anywhere, but last year I presented in a summit for accountants talking about crafting deliverables that matter. So that, I think, is the title of the podcast episode. And I walk through the reports and what we do each month. So just to kind of like summarize it, we do a bullet point for all of our clients. We do bullet pointed emails with their, with the links to their financials, but most of the time they don't look at them. So we want them to at least have the information that's important from them. So we do a bullet pointed little summary inside the email about their revenue, their cost of goods sold, their profit margins, their expenses in a summarized format so that they can at a glance understand where they're at each month. So that's like a quick and dirty version of presentation, was an hour long. So I go more into depth on that. I would suggest go listen to that. Also, I just created a bunch of Spotify playlists on Spotify, obviously, for the podcast. So if you have Spotify, you can my team is going to put together a page so that you can get access to all the lists and the links of all the playlists that I just created. One of them is on advisory. And so I think I put that specific podcast episode into that playlist. Plus there's some other podcast episodes that are probably going to talk about the same thing, the reporting and all that kind of stuff. Your other option, if you want to dive really deep and go for a paid option, Elevate is the next move for you. So I go over how to analyze financial statements, how to review them to make sure your team is doing their job. If you have other bookkeepers, that the quality control is there, how to summarize the information for the clients, what reports to give them, how to budget, forecast, and then how to become more of a partner in strategy for the client as well. So that's an option as well. And that you can access at ambitiousbookkeeper.com/elevate. It's always open for enrollment and it is a self-paced program. All right. So hopefully that helps. You can also go to my Instagram and in my highlights, the podcast highlight, I saved all of those playlists in my stories. So they're linked there as well. Nadia says, I charged my client $3,000 for a year of cleanup work, and now they're asking how much I would charge for ongoing monthly bookkeeping. I typically charge $800 per month for the amount of work they require. In this case, they might ask why the monthly fee is more expensive than the annual cleanup, suggesting they could just have me do a yearly catch-up and save money instead of paying monthly. How would I handle these questions? I love this question. Okay, let me get up on my soapbox real quick. This is a really common thing, and it's something that I know you're not the only one that struggles with it. I've come across this as well. Number one, this is what you have to sell the benefits of is, yes, it is cheaper. In this last year, it was cheaper. So if you have to have this conversation with the client, this is how I would have it. This last year, it was cheaper than if you would have been working with us monthly. However, what you were missing out on is being able to make decisions throughout the year on your numbers by having them caught up. So the value is not all in just the bookkeeping. It is in having the visibility to your numbers throughout the year and the peace of mind that you don't have to wait for a cleanup. Next year, my cleanup prices are actually going to be XYZ and make them higher than that $800 a month, okay? Especially for that client. So that they don't have an incentive to repeat this pattern. And if there's anything else that you're offering in that monthly package, like communication, strategy, financial statements with the bullet points, whatever it is, make sure you highlight that and let them know, like, if you have this throughout the year, you can avoid XYZ. So if you came across something during their cleanup that if they had known during the year, how it would have changed the trajectory of anything or changed them being able to tax plan or whatever. If they missed out on a tax planning opportunity because they didn't have their bookkeeping done and didn't know where they were at year end, that's a really good thing to highlight. And you can highlight to them what that actually cost them. So in theory, it didn't cost just $3,000. It actually cost you $10,000 because you weren't able to tax plan and convert to an S corporation or whatever it was, right? Or you weren't able to tax plan and set aside, create a 401k for your company and set aside profits into that and all that. So I'm not sure what your level of going in depth with them was or what knowledge you have about their tax situation, but that's also an opportunity to let them know it didn't just actually cost you $3,000. It cost you this much, or it could have cost you up to $25,000 in tax savings or whatever. That's my suggestion for you. To recap, if you have this conversation with this particular client, also, let me say real quick, if they haven't said that yet, don't project your own like fear of them potentially bringing that up as a like, why would it cost more? Because they might yeah, exactly. Also, if there is fraud that happened, it can be caught in time because they might not see it that way. They might actually realize, yeah, if I have it done throughout the year, it's more valuable because I can actually make decisions. So for you, if you have to have this conversation with this particular client, let them know that next year, let me get a calculator because I can't do math in my head. 800 times 12. Next year, their cleanup is going to be $10,000. So they may as well just work with you monthly. All right. So that is one thing going forward. I would try to do your cleanup pricing as such so that it's not an incentive for them. Although for some businesses, they are small enough that it really doesn't matter to them. And if it doesn't put a wrench in your year end or anything like that, you get to decide how much you're going to charge. But I would try to close that gap and make it to where your cleanup prices start at a point that is in line with what your monthly fee is, if that makes sense. Okay, Nadia, I have another question. Yay. I currently have 15 clients and handle all the work myself without any contractors or employees. I'm not quite ready to hire someone permanently, but if I wanted to take a break for a month or two, what are my options? Would it make sense to temporarily hire an outside bookkeeper just for that period? Yeah, so that is a really good thing to consider. So consider this is called contingency planning. Whether you're planning for a vacation or not, something in life could happen. And so for you, if you are handling all the work yourself without any contractors or employees, I would say you can absolutely probably find someone that can contract with you and step in and get things done good enough, probably not to the level that you would, but good enough. And you would want to prep your clients for that period as well, letting them know like these 2 months, I'm going to be out on a sabbatical or whatever the thing is. If it's maternity leave, if it's literally you just need a mini retirement, whatever it is, let them know I'm going to be out on a sabbatical for the months of blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to, over the next couple months, you want to give them time to prepare. Over the next couple months, let them know that you're prepping for this. I am training someone to get them up to speed. The only thing that's going to be different is the communication is going to come from this other person, and it's just going to be a temporary thing unless we decide to bring them on permanently. Most of your clients will probably understand and maybe be a little bit jealous that you get to step away from your business. Yeah, so I would just be very forthcoming with your client base, communicate the transition. You can absolutely find a contractor to step in. You're going to be paying more for someone if they're, knowledgeable. Like there's probably someone in this community, to be honest. If you're in the Facebook group, I would post in there someone that's just left corporate, working on building their own book of business that probably knows their stuff really well. And as long as you have your particular process documented, that's going to be the other key. As long as you have your particular processes documented, anyone that is working on starting their business and has that accounting background should be able to step in and execute. as long as they have access to everything they need. So that would be a really good approach. And maybe you'll find that you enjoy not doing all the bookkeeping yourself, and you can, after you come back from your vacation or whatever it is that you are going to do, you can hire a bookkeeper to take on a lot of the day-to-day, and you can step into that next level CEO role. Awesome. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for coming to the April live Q&A. I don't think it ended up broadcasting onto YouTube, so I'm just going to have to upload it. I also have been uploading the audio of the podcast, of the Q&As onto the podcast about a month after they occur. So each month you can expect a Q&A episode on the podcast if you want to just wait for them to pop up there. So I think we've been doing that at least all of this year. There's several from prior years also, and those are also on one of the Spotify playlists for Q&As. So be on the lookout for that. If you are on our email list, you will be getting an email towards the end of April or beginning of May. It's called the Monthly Digest. This is going to have all of this information in it. It's going to have the links to the landing page with all of the Spotify playlists, some other news and upcoming fun things that we're doing in the community. So make sure, if you're not on our email list, that you are subscribed, and you can do that by going to ambitiousbookkeeper.com/subscribe. Make sure you're on the email list. We have lots of fun, cool things coming up, and I want to make sure you guys are aware of them. And like I said, if you are on the email list, you will get the links to all the Spotify playlists. You won't have to go hunt for them. Everyone else who is not on the email list will have the opportunity to opt into that later on. But yeah, if you're already on the list, you're going to get it. So, all right, everyone, thank you so much for spending time with me this morning.
Thank you to everyone who helps make this podcast possible. Content and interviews are produced by me, Serena Shu. Our intro and outro music is written and performed by my brother, Ian Gilliam. Editing is also by Ian, using his awesome sound engineering skills along with Descript software. Hosting and publishing is by Buzzsprout, and you can check out the show notes for links to all of these amazing resources and resources mentioned in the episode.
Be ambitious.